we had Evan on the hockey podcast last week, and we were giving him a hard time that like he feels pressure to talk about Kovalenko now. Do you feel pressure to go up to see the Eagles?
I do, because I'll see Kevin McDonald at Avs games, and he'll ask me about how things are going. Yeah. And even Chris McFarland asked if I was still going up there, and I felt guilty because I haven't gone up as much, but it still remains really important to me to get up there as much as I can.
Chris McFarland, you're like, yes, I'm up. I'm heading up tomorrow.
I'll be going tomorrow.
I'll be there. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to get a head start on the traffic. Okay. All right. I'm in my hotel room in Minnesota. Very self-conscious about how much my voice is going to carry for these people that are next to me. These nice, fine folks that did not ask to be in a room next to someone recording a podcast. So we have a great guest today. So we're probably going to get to that pretty quickly. Because we have a great guest, and so that I don't get a noise complaint for talking too loud, and someone calling and saying, "Oh, they're arguing in the next room," and it's really just me in here talking to you guys through this camera. I'm in Minnesota. Just got in today. Was in where was I? Columbus yesterday. Or really this morning. Gonna circle back to that. Interesting stuff going on this week in the NHL, in sports, college, pro. Caitlin Clark, her game against LSU, her and Iowa's game against LSU. Over 12 million average viewers, higher than the NBA last season, the NHL last season, the MLB last season. So big things happening there. One of the smaller things that I find interesting, believe it or not, shocker, it happened in the NHL. Jeff Skinner of the Buffalo Sabres hits 1,000 games in the NHL, an incredible accomplishment. Congratulations to him. You can never take that away. It's an unbelievable thing to accomplish. 1,000 games in the NHL, has never played in the playoffs. I just find that fascinating. And, you know, obviously he's had ups and downs in his career. Going to be anxious to see kind of what shakes out here in the next couple of years, see if, you know, you can get him on a team that can get a look. But it's just, that's an interesting legacy. It's an interesting legacy to eventually leave behind. 1,000 games, no playoff games yet. I hope for Jeff Skinner he gets there eventually. I've heard nothing but good things about who Jeff Skinner is. I think he's a talented hockey player, and at times we've seen him be a very good hockey player. But 1,000 NHL games, 0 playoff games. Pretty incredible, unbelievable, crazy. Not really sure. Other thing, Nathan MacKinnon, now the heavy favorite for the Hart Trophy. I guess I shouldn't say heavy favorite. Comfortably the favorite. Nikola Jokic, heavily the favorite for the NBA MVP. I saw a tweet, genuinely I don't remember, I think it was Ryan Koenigsberg, DNVR, said something like, I'm quoting a movie, that like it's hard to, you know, you wish that you knew you were in the good old days while they were happening, and how this is the good old days for Avs and Nuggets. For sure for Nuggets. By a mile for Nuggets. I don't even think there's a question about that. For the Avs, you know, I talked about it somewhat recently, and it felt maybe a little silly and maybe a little premature, saying that Nathan MacKinnon, especially with the season that he's having, is closing in on Joe Sakic legacy status, at least on the ice. Obviously, Joe Sakic now, he's in that John Elway conversation where he's got now the accomplishments as an executive, and that's just kind of a different thing. But on ice, Nathan MacKinnon is approaching that type of lore, that type of legacy. And it's just, we might actually be sitting in an era, especially depending on what the Avs can do this year, where they are approaching, in my eyes at least, clearly passing the late 90s, early 2000s, golden years for the Colorado Avalanche. Like I said, got to see what they still do. Still cups that need to be won and things like that. But it's an... I'll go back to what I was saying about Jeff Skinner. It's or not about Jeff Skinner, but I'll use the same adjective, right? Same superlative. It's almost unbelievable what we are seeing right now in Ball Arena with what you have going with the Nuggets and the Avs simultaneously. That's not just something that should appeal to people in Denver. That's something that I think should appeal to people everywhere. You're having this both play out in the same building, in the same city. Obviously, we've seen it in the past where you've had cities who have several good teams at once, or win multiple championships at once. But I mean, these are truly elite, dominant eras for those two teams. Pretty remarkable stuff that we're seeing. Last thing I'm going to talk about here, then we're going to get to our guest. In Columbus yesterday, I visited my 32nd arena this season. I want to give a shout out to my guy, Harrison Kell, really old friend of mine. Back when we were in high school, he and I talked about, man, wouldn't it be awesome one day to get to every arena? We talked about, if you won the lottery, you could just 1 year, you'll just travel with your team and go see every game. And so being able to do it, not to get too, worked up about it, we're here for work. But first of all, I'm very, very, very fortunate to get to do what I do. And then I'm sitting here in my hotel room doing this show with you guys here. Very fortunate. I can't say thank you enough to everyone that's watching this. You guys are the ones that make this all possible. Blake Rubenstein at Guerilla Capturing, just at Guerilla Capturing, Guerilla Sports, Guerilla Studios. Everybody that's involved in Guerilla Sports. We do this because we think that we can be better every day and continue to provide great coverage and continue to take stuff to the next level and kind of push forward and push the envelope, and that's what we're really excited about for the future. But everybody has worked really hard this year to put Guerilla Sports on the map. JJ Jerez, my guy Jay Borishma, Mark Chernyshov, a bunch of people who I'm not naming, but it kind of hit me yesterday. I got to kind of check off this crazy bucket list item, and I was like, oh, nice, that's awesome. Get to do all these things, and then I just stopped and kind of thought about everything that went into it. Very lucky, very fortunate, and yeah, it was just pretty surreal to check that off yesterday. 32 NHL arenas in one season. Guerilla Sports and myself, thank you guys all so much for helping make that happen for us this year. We've had a blast doing it. Can't wait for the playoffs. All right, let's get on to our guest today. Meghan Angley of DNVR, my really good friend. I worked with her for a couple of years. Love her work. She's really talented writer, and she's got a funny personality. She's got a great old backstory, origin story, as she likes to call it. Meghan Angley. Hope you guys enjoy. My next guest, I spent the last 2 years working very closely with my good friend, Meghan Angley from DNVR. Meghan, it's been too long since we've been sitting on a set like this.
No, I feel like we need to say welcome to At the Ring.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I know, we should. We'll flash the graphic across the screen just real fast.
Just for old time's sake.
How are you doing? You've been in the car a lot today.
I've been in the car a lot today. Just came from an Eagles practice, and it's been a really good day. I always feel like myself again when I go back up there and get back around the American League guys.
Yeah, you're
I've got questions
I've
abundant
got questions.
for that. But no, you have. That's always been a place where, like, I feel like you kind of own Budweiser Event Center. Like, you walk in, it's like, oh, Megan's here. Megan's back. Glad to see that you're still going up there. And so is CMAC, it sounds like.
Yeah. And, I always felt bad because Cronin would give me long interviews, and I don't know if I have that kind of leeway with Schneekloth, but he gave me almost 17 minutes today.
Yeah.
I was pushing
nice.
it. Yeah. So I was really appreciative of that. But they're always so good to the media when you go up.
Yeah. No, we talk about that a lot with, I hate even calling them minor league because those are pro players, but minor leagues, college, junior stuff, they're always so great with their time. We had Evan on the hockey podcast last week, and we were giving him a hard time that he feels pressure to talk about Kovalenko now. Do you feel pressure to go up to see the Eagles?
I do, because I'll see Kevin McDonald at Avs games, and he'll ask me about how things are going. And even Chris McFarland asked if I was still going up there, and I felt guilty because I haven't gone up as much, but it still remains really important to me to get up there as much as I can.
Chris McFarland, you're like, yes, I'm up. I'm heading up tomorrow.
I'll be going tomorrow.
I'll be there. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to get a head start on the traffic.
I'm gonna get it.
Megan, if you've been watching, I start all my interviews the same way. Toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
We're on perfect streak here, folks.
Have the people who've said under had cats?
No, Romy said under initially, and then she goes, oh, no, wait, over.
Okay.
And I got really worried. I was like, Romy, no, please, don't do this. But no, everyone has answered correctly so far, so that's good. Megan, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's really a question for them, because you've told me this story before, and it's why I feel like I need to ask you again, because I thought it was so great. You working in sports, and especially working in hockey, we meet a lot of people who are very passionate about the sport, about the league, sports in general. You have a great passion for this game. And like I said, I'm going to ask you, where did it come from? But I know where it came from because I've heard the story before. But I truly did. I thought it was special in that it was a very non-traditional way to find yourself in the same room as a bunch of these people who, grew up around hockey rinks their entire life.
It's something I felt self-conscious about in the past, and something I also take pride in, but I didn't grow up in a hockey household. No one in my family watched or played hockey. Yeah. So I found it completely independently, and that's why I take pride in it. And it started with my good friend Phoebe moving into the neighborhood. She was another Air Force family like mine. And
okay, all right, so your dad was Air Force, because you guys lived everywhere.
Yes, we lived overseas, so that's also part of my excuse, is I wasn't necessarily in places that you would find hockey super naturally.
Yeah.
Except for Omaha, which I did go back afterwards and get into the USHL teams that are based out of Nebraska, but that was after I found hockey. So it wasn't while I was living there, but we lived a lot of places. So I immediately connected with my new friend Phoebe in the neighborhood. She came from a football family that enjoyed sports. And so we started going to athletic events on the Air Force Academy. We started with football. We went to a few of those games, did basketball, and finally hockey was on our list to check it out. And I'd always liked sports passively. I did play sports growing up, but they were things like dance, cheer, gymnastics, and
so that was gonna be my question. You guys weren't a sports family, really, casually?
No, very casually. My dad exposed us to baseball. So my first ever live sporting event was a minor league baseball game.
Nice.
And I actually went to a lot of minor league baseball games. So I like to think maybe my origin story for prospect coverage begins there.
Oh my God. And we're getting there. Don't worry.
Because it all kind of makes sense. So I go to a college hockey game for the first time. And the minute I laid eyes on it, that's when I knew that this was a little bit different for me. There's something about the air when you walk into a hockey rink that feels different. It feels a little bit heavier. It gives you a little bit of tingles.
There's the crispness in the air.
It's crisp. It's cool. And in the Cadet Ice Arena, you can sit really close to the bench. You can unfortunately smell hockey, but you also feel really connected to the game. And the thing that really sold me on hockey was the starting lineup announcement, because they dim the house lights, the players come out onto the ice, and they really jazz it up. There's music, the announcer is getting you hype for the players, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And then the game begins, and I'd also never seen anything like that before. The pace of the game, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And I went home and I thought to myself, how do I see more of this?
Yeah.
Because the college hockey schedule, one, I don't have a driver's license. I'm in middle school.
Okay,
so
all right. I was going to say, all right, well, let's set a timeline here. Middle school, okay.
I'm in middle school. I have no driver's license, and college hockey schedule only plays on the weekends. They go out of town. I needed more than that. So I tuned into an Avalanche game, and Matt Duchene scores within the first few seconds of me tuning in. So I think to myself, I like this. This is cool. I need to see more of this.
Yeah. Okay.
So thankfully, I had really supportive parents who never to my face said, is this a phase? Because I came home one day and essentially said, I like hockey now. They're like, okay, that's good.
Cool.
And so they started supporting me by taking me to games. We'd drive up to Denver from Colorado Springs and go to games, and they'd take me to more Air Force Academy games. And so I was getting involved that way. I wasn't necessarily the coolest kid in high school, so it's a part of my lore, though. Like, my happy place was coming home from school, grabbing trail mix, one of those ice drinks, grabbing my Beagle, and watching Avs games. And I started to read up Denver Post. That's sort of where my introduction to sports journalism started, was reading articles on the Denver Post in the computer lab during lunch, because I was someone who ate lunch by myself in the computer lab.
Again, I've heard that story before, and it breaks my heart every
but
time.
It was like hockey was my sanctuary. And so...
Because she's the coolest kid in the media room now, just so everybody knows.
But I was definitely not the coolest kid then. And that's when I started learning about training camp. And so my mom, because I still didn't have a license, would take me to training camp in the summer.
Wow.
And that's where I started to collect those rosters that I still have in my hockey binder.
Yep.
I took notes, and I have to admit, I had no idea what I was looking at.
So I was going to ask you, when you started doing, because you are very...
note-taking?
Oh, meticulous. And so I was going to ask, did that start when you were not casually getting into it, but Air Force, like when you were going, just as a fan, were you...
Yes, and it wasn't the same notes as we know it today, but I kept the physical ticket stubs because we were able to get those.
Totally.
And I would make note of what happened in that game.
Ooh, okay, cool.
Just kind of the overall outcome. A lot of games won. The Avs played well when we were there in person.
Nice.
This was a bad period of Avs hockey, but we got $13 lower bowl tickets because of it.
Oh, that era.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a great era for going to games.
Exactly. And we were really fortunate that they won the games we were going to.
Totally.
So my parents loved the Avs. They love the Avs to this day. And so I was taking notes on there. So I still have a few of those ticket stubs in the infamous hockey binder with some of the early iterations of my notes. And then similar on some of those camp rosters.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is unique about what you do in our market, absolutely, but really even on a broader scope, is, Meghan, I feel like you humanize pro athletes in a very different way. And I just want to know where that kind of comes from. And you gave me about 5 things that have now been added to my list of questions. So I'm going to circle back, but this is one thing that I do find unique to you. And I'm just curious how what you were just talking about impacts that, or if that's just a personality trait that you have.
It's a little bit of the timing that I found hockey too, because there were some storylines that were very tragic that were happening in hockey around the time that I was really getting invested, and that was the passing of the locomotive team, Rick Ripien, Derek Bugard. And so these things actually tugged at my heartstrings, as well as being able to tune in and watch the draft. That got me invested in the emotional storylines of hockey, because this was like I described, my sanctuary, so I felt connected to this community.
Yep.
And so being connected to that community, my heart ached when these things happened in hockey that were really devastating. And so with respect to the passing of a lot of enforcers all at once, that's actually why I started as a biology major at DU with an interest in their cognitive neuroscience program, is I wanted to study the effects of repeated hits to the head.
Yeah, wow.
And so obviously that has changed, but the emotional connection to hockey was actually there from the beginning, and it was just because of some of these really unfortunate things happening in hockey at that time. And then just generally seeing hockey at such a beginning level because there were AAA teams. So I would go to Colorado Rampage games because those are right in Colorado Springs. I know it. Look,
well, and actually, I shouldn't have laughed yet, but I'm waiting for what's coming next.
So I was okay. I didn't go to any Thunderbirds games. I didn't do it. You know what? The origin story for my love of the Thunderbirds is a lot of DU players came from that club.
Yeah.
And so I just attributed my love of Thunderbirds to my love of DU.
Yeah, it was the easy
it was an easy
connection.
pipeline. But I apparently had this love of AAA hockey somewhere in there.
I do also need to point out that this became a running joke on a show like 2 years ago.
I would get angry.
That was not even like Megan's actual thing. Like she isn't actually that passionate about AAA hockey. She made one minor comment about it and we ran with it for like 30 minutes. And so
I got fully angry because of the list of alumni that have come from the Thunderbirds.
There's only been a couple times where we ended shows and I was like, I think Megan got actually angry at me on that one. And I think that was one of them.
Because I was pretty defensive of that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you were saying you'd go to those games, or does that just kind of tie into?
It ties into the love of the beginning stages of hockey, though, because I was growing to appreciate the game at the collegiate level. So I know some people who go from watching NHL to NCAA, they're like, I can't stomach this. This is so slow. What are we looking at? I had the opposite, though. My path to hockey started through college. And so I grew an appreciation for watching hockey at all different levels.
Yeah.
I had a friend in Nebraska who worked with the Lincoln Stars. And so I drove out there on a road trip and watched USHL games.
Nice.
Grew a love of that league.
Yeah.
Not Katie Gauss level love, but like a love of the USHL. Yeah. So we would probably bond over that.
Yeah, our girl Katie, she knows someone in the USHL for everything. All right, so now I am really curious of how someone who was casually into sports until they were a teenager ends up not only loving sports but works in sports.
You know,
where did that start? Where like when did you decide to go from biology to study the effects of, repeat bolus in the head to like, no, I actually just want to be a part of this every day?
Yeah, it was around my sophomore year at DU because I knew.
Oh, wow.
I knew I wanted to work in sports. I knew I wanted to work in hockey. I just thought it was a really different capacity. And that's going back. DU didn't have the best journalism program. If I knew that's where I was going to end up, I might not have landed there, to be honest with you. Yeah. It was a big selling point that they had the D1 team there, though, because I was able to get my first job in hockey through their work-study program while I was a student there.
Well, and so I'm going to cut you off just real fast because you said you always wanted to work in hockey. I'm assuming that on the medicine side at first.
Studying.
Okay, yeah, right, yes.
And so started as the bio major with that intent. And I was going through the writing prerequisites, and it was getting a lot of positive feedback from my writing professors about the work I was doing. And I was always making the prompts about hockey. So I found myself naturally wanting to write about it. And I was also reflecting on sitting down to write my lab reports and not feeling the same passion for those as I did when I sat down to write the writing prompts for my hockey chosen topics. And so around OChem 2, which I'm sure a lot of people hear that and they're like, yeah, that was probably what really did it. It's like I was sitting in the after hours, like every TA study session possible to get through OChem 2. And so I think that was also what helped me to decide that I am excelling in my writing courses and I am struggling in my chemistry courses. So I think that helped me to make the decision to make the switch too.
Well, so here's what's funny, Megan. Like I had same but different kind of thing, right? I did. I'm not going to talk about where or who because people don't like it. I worked a sales job, tech industry sales job, and there was one day I was out at lunch, not a sales lunch with some friends who did the same job for other companies, right? And we were talking about work and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. And then one of the guys who I had gotten to know, but he was kind of like a friend of a friend. He goes, oh, Jess, well, hey, how about the Avs, man? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I just kind of started going, and someone else, well, what do you think about this? Oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Well, this, that, and the other. And this guy actually cut me off. He goes, Jesse, we've been talking here for the last hour, and the tone of your voice changed the second we brought up the Avs.
Yeah.
And he goes, you should think about doing that. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And he goes, I'm being dead serious. He's like, he was even just casually, like you should just do it for fun. And it wasn't till I started digging into that where I had the exact same kind of thing where it's like,
Oh.
I don't at all want to talk about the stuff that I'm supposed to talk, or, talk about, whatever, write about. But all I want to do is talk about this.
Yep.
Like, that's all I want to do. That's all I want. I want to talk about it. I want to go. I want to see it. And it was kind of this slow, like, okay, is this the find your passion thing that people always talk about?
Yeah.
And so like I said, similar, where I was doing one thing, and it was actually the comparison of how I felt about this thing that I was doing relative to how I felt when I talked about, went and saw, watched a video on, read an article on. I started to notice the difference in how it made me feel.
Absolutely. You light up when you talk about hockey.
Right.
It's noticeable to anyone else.
And it's just one of those things where I feel like to work in this industry, you have to have a level of that.
Definitely.
Right? Because it's weird hours, it's late nights, it's weekends, it's holidays, it's you show up for morning skate at 10 and then somehow you're still at Ball Arena at 10,
easily. Yes.
Yeah. 10 is like we're heading down to coach. Like,
right.
But point being, like, you have to have that level of passion for it.
Absolutely.
And it's like I said, it's funny to hear your story, because I almost feel like yours went in reverse. You found the passion, then you found pro.
Right. Oh, I should be doing this for a living in this exact way.
Right. Because, like, I know for me, and maybe you felt the same way. Like, again, growing up, I'd go to training camp and you'd show up to the odd practice or, going to games. And I'd always be like, oh, how cool to be, work in the media. But, that's just it was always like this thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever actually anything that you did or pursued. You know what I mean?
No, because I think back to the high school version of me who knew I wanted to work in sports. And I remember watching one of Lauren Gardner's first ever interviews at intermission. I want to say it was with David Jones. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I could do that. That seemed really hard.
Yeah.
And
it's also hard when you're looking at LG, because she's like the most pro, makes everything look
exactly. I was like, I don't think I could do that. She did that really well, and that seemed hard. And so I am not exactly doing that to this day, but I am in rooms I never thought I would be in. Yeah. And so to that end, it did still surprise me, even though I knew I wanted to work in hockey that whole time. Yeah. It still surprised me how I ended up here.
I feel the same way. And the episode that I had Romy on, she talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I remember having that big time. I didn't go to journalism school. I don't have a journalism degree.
Yeah.
And the first dozen times I was asked, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to J school? Oh, actually, I don't know. I'm not really, it's just like you want to crawl under a rock.
Yeah.
Like there's pressure.
Oh, there absolutely is. I love this about Romy's interview too, because she had a later start into her media career, and I did as well. Yeah. Even though I laid out this journalism path, I went into marketing. I didn't believe in myself.
Right. It's Meghan, I did the exact same thing. I like you said, you don't believe in yourself, and it's, again, it to me, it was always kind of like this thing where it was like, okay, well, that'd be fun to do, but I have to do this.
Yeah, let's be realistic.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so I did something safe that I knew I could do, and I knew I could get the job.
Yep.
And I didn't, at the time, I didn't have the guts to go for it and believe that I could do it.
No, and it was how volatile the industry can be.
Totally.
When I was a junior at DU, I remember Denver Post did a lot of cutbacks to their athletic coverage. And even in DU, I remember seeing people carrying boxes out of their office because they had just been laid off.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think there's opportunity for me in this world right now. Like, it wouldn't be wise for me to try and gamble on that. Whereas I had this communications minor, and my athletic job through DU as a student was actually marketing based. So I just went the marketing route, and I was not fulfilled doing that.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily, at least for me, you hear like, oh, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's still a lot of work. Like,
oh, it is, but it feels so different.
It feels, because there are days where it's like, oh, God, I don't want to go sit in this cold rink and blah, blah, blah. I've never felt the I had only ever heard people talk about their jobs being rewarding until this.
No, it feels different.
Yeah, it's still work. It's still a job, but there's a different payoff.
Absolutely.
And you have to be okay with that payoff because this job doesn't always pay off away.
No, it's true. And I think that's a unifying quality about this industry too, is a lot of people's paths will have that in them where it's not necessarily easy. There's a lot of luck involved too.
Oh my gosh.
Which is why it's such a hard question when people are like, how did you get into this? Like, what advice would you give me? And I don't feel appropriate giving it. I don't feel like I'm
totally
equipped to give it because I just happen to get really lucky.
Yeah. I know. I'm with you. And I mean, you and I think part of the reason you and I have always clicked so well is we had, we both started late in this career.
Yeah.
We both kind of had this like, we came into an established company that had a base.
Yes.
But at least for me, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like I felt like, okay, well, I'm here, but I felt like I had to prove myself.
Oh.
And looking back on it now, I don't have to prove anything to anybody,
No.
But like I still felt like this very green, new, like, oh man, what if people don't like me, blah blah blah, and it was just, it's weird.
I know from how much raw emotion you saw from me in that first year, how I can relate to that exact feeling.
Yeah. What has your experience been like? 2 years in, what would you say, like, kind of looking in the rearview mirror, what has it been like?
The first year was tough.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any advice to really make that easier. You just have to kind of get through it, because I was so much more worried about what people thought about me, but people were also so much more critical because I was an unknown entity coming out of nowhere, and I did to some extent need to prove myself. And I still think that's true to some degree, but I think in the second year, night and day difference.
Yeah.
It is so much better.
It in you too.
It is so much better, and how I've been received too.
Totally.
Like, this is such a wonderful community. I don't have any experience covering another team outside of Colorado to compare it to, but I do feel like the fan base that is established here has really been such a positive part of why my year 2 is so good. Is I have been embraced by so many more people who make me never want to leave Colorado.
Yeah.
And the respect that I have felt from the organization has been from day one the thing that really keeps me going, helps me to refer back to, because I have always felt treated with respect by everyone in the organization, from the Eagles to the Avs, front offices of both, players, coaches. It has made doing what I do so much easier. Yeah. And that's why it feels a lot better in year 2, is being able to refer back to that as a frame of reference.
Well, and with your point of, people were critical, it's also the first time, and I'm using the proverbial you here, not you. It's also the first time that you have just people critiquing your work.
Yeah.
Not coworkers, not your boss, not your supervisors. Like, no, these are just people.
A lot of people.
A lot of people who all have their own opinion, not just about the content of what I wrote, but about how I wrote it, about my voice, about all these different things. And it's really hard to, like, I this is one thing that, again, as I learn and grow, I remember that first year telling you, like, oh, don't let that bother you. Because I had gone through a couple of years where I had worked through it bothering me, and I had gotten to a point where I could not let it bother me, or bothers me less.
Bothers me less.
And I've found ways to, deal with all that kind of stuff. But I think what you honestly said there, Megan, of your first year in pro sports, you just got to get through it.
It's true. To anybody considering it, don't let it discourage you. I think it's just universally hard. It's
universally hard, and there's no playbook for it, because everybody does stuff a little bit different.
Definitely.
And even this, like, you and I worked together for the last couple of years. Well, I'm doing a very similar job, but it's very different. Like, there's different. Yeah. It's just crazy.
It's true. What'll be asked of you is very different. And I did want to thank you for being there in my first year, because you shepherded me into the industry. You showed me the rink ropes, and you were always in my corner. And I don't think my first year I would have gotten through it if I didn't have that. So I'm glad that things worked out the way that they did,
Yeah.
because that would have been a really tough first year to get through.
Well, and it warms my heart to hear you say that, but I always did see a lot of myself in you because, again, I will never forget, and AJ loves to tell this story. My first ever locker room interview was Sven Andrighetto.
Yeah.
And before we walked in, I was told, he can be tough sometimes. He can be a little prickly. And I was like, no, there's a story here. I'm going to go talk to him about the story. And we were, I think it was 5 games, maybe 4 games into the season. He had 2 multi-goal games. He was leading the team with 4 goals. And I wanted to ask him about it because he was a waiver claim the year before.
Yeah.
And suddenly here we are, 5 games into a new NHL season, and he's playing on a line with Nathan MacKinnon, and he's got 5 goals. And so I said, hey, hi, Sven, my name's Jesse, blah, blah, blah. I said, it's only a handful of games, but you're leading the team in goals. Just what does it mean to you to be at this spot, given last year? And he goes, doesn't mean anything. It's been 5 games. No one cares. And I was like, I don't know what to say next. And I needed someone else there to, help kind of pick me up on that stuff. And so I remember when you and I got paired up and we started going to the rink, I just remember that deer in the headlights feeling of like, these are they're all nice, but it's a very intimidating room to walk into.
And the first time I ever had locker room access because of COVID, everyone was brought to the podium for the longest time, was like the beginning of the rookie camp. So it is so much more crowded than usual in that locker room because there's so many people there.
Yep.
It was even more intimidating.
Yeah.
I remember you talked to me the next day like, hey, you're okay. that feeling that you felt in there when you walked in, you're like, I don't know where to look. I don't know what to do. Yeah. That was normal.
Yeah, it's I forgot about that too, the podium. That just how different that made everything. And it made everything feel a lot more like, oh, okay, I've got some distance. But yeah,
it was really different.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish that you would have known day one walking in? Or let me ask this, the second part of this, or are you happy because I know that I look back on it now, I'm like, no, but all of that stuff has now shaped me into the person I am. Still have a lot of room to grow and get better. But like, I'm trying to look at stuff now more with like it's all learning. But like, do you have anything that it's like, gosh, that would have been nice to know?
It would be to assure myself that it's going to matter so much less than I think, because it was just heightened in the first year, especially. Every experience, every interaction, I would overanalyze, and any criticism that I would receive, despite receiving positive feedback as well, it just all of it matters so much less than I realized. And I wouldn't have believed it in the moment. I know that. So it's like you just said, it may not have mattered much to go back in time and tell myself that, but that's the part that I probably just had to experience firsthand, is actually feeling it matter less.
Yeah. And the belief in yourself, and that's something that I still work on.
That part is hard too. Yeah. It's better though. It does get better. And I find myself genuinely confident in certain things that I might have been a bit more wavering on before. So I like that.
It's funny that you use that word because we talked to Eustace Annanen today, who signed a new contract and all of that. And someone asked him about like, how are you feeling about how you're playing, right now? And he said, well, it's been good. And he said, I'm getting more and more confident every game. And I don't know why. We've heard players say that 100 times. There was just something about it that stuck in my brain when he said it to me 2 hours ago, whatever, where I was just like, that's so interesting. That's him telling himself, you can play in this league. You can stop these shots.
Yeah.
And, you wonder if a year ago, 6 months ago, what the voice in his head was actually saying. And that belief in yourself is just so important.
Yeah, because I think the only way to build it is to get the reps in, and that only comes with time. You can't really shortcut that, and that's why there's not much I could go back and tell myself. I just have to go experience it, kind of like you said.
Yeah. You've been very generous with your time. I'm winding down a bit here. I got to ask you about your outfits, Megan. You're always the nicest one dressed in the press room. Are you a clothes person? Do you have a lot of clothes and you just want to like what? Why are you always make all the rest of us look like such garbage?
You know, I sort of went into this job with the mindset of wanting to be unapologetically girl, because it is not lost on me that I'm a woman in this space, and I didn't want to hide from that fact. I didn't want to necessarily make this some sort of distraction or a problem, but I didn't want to overthink what it is that I wear. And I kind of wanted to just dress how I want to dress, still appropriately. And there's certain things I reflect on, like maybe the open toe shoes weren't the moment. I understand that. But it all stems from a place of it's honestly being true to myself. That's where it comes from. That's a great answer, And it's wanting to embrace style, because I do like clothes. I do like girly things. And again, it's not something I want to shy away from, even in a space with a lot of men in it. And so I think that just translates to how I show up for the rink every day. Is I enjoy looking nice. You know, my Puerto Rican side of the family, like my grandma would never leave the house without lipstick and heels. And I think it's just hereditary.
So I'll be honest, I'm gonna put you on blast a little bit here. When we were in Nashville, there was a couple times where we were all going to go out or whatever. And there were 2 times where Meghan, it was funny because I was like, well, you got to respect the hell out of that. Where you were just like, no, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not ready to go yet. If you guys want to go, I'll meet you. Or you can wait. But I'm not ready yet. And it is what it is. And my mom's the exact same way. My mom will be like, Mom, we got to go. She's like, then I guess I'm not going.
Then I guess I'm not going is insane. I love it.
And so those times in Nashville, like you said,
no,
I want to look this way and I'm going to look that way. So figure it out. And I respect the hell out of that.
Thank you so much.
But no, I do love that answer of like, and truthfully, I kind of am the same way on the opposite end of the spectrum. I never show up to the rink looking sloppy.
Yeah.
I was told the other day I look comfy.
Yes.
And comfy is the furthest rung down that I will go. I don't want to look anything beyond comfy. Like
that's valid.
I wear like nice clothes. I wear expensive stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's a hoodie, but it's a nice hoodie. It sits nice. It's not wrinkled. It's whatever. But it comes from honestly the same place of like, I want to wear what I want.
Yeah. I want to show up how I would normally dress.
Right. I've always kind of felt that kind of stuff where it's like, you don't wear a 3-piece suit just around.
No.
That's not how people dress.
No.
And now obviously there's always a time and place for stuff like that, but like we're going to the rink. I want to wear what I want to wear. And if that's, looking as nice as you do right now, or if that's wearing what I wore to the rink earlier, joggers and a hoodie, like that's what you should wear what you want to wear.
I want to show up as my authentic self, and I haven't been made fun of by Cale McCarr. So
hey, there you go.
Like that's sort of when I know, all right, I've gone too far with how I've dressed today.
Yeah. Arif got the...
Even Jared is hard on people.
I was gonna say, maybe try to find the clip of him calling out JJ.
In his jacket.
It's a bright blue jacket. I like it though.
And Peter's hats.
Yeah. Nate called out Peter for the hat, and that's where I was like, I just wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about your hat the whole time. I like it. Thank you. No problem.
That would be it for me.
That's how I know I've gone too far. If anyone has anything to say about what I'm wearing, I will burn it immediately.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, right in the
Thanks. I didn't like it anyways.
Meghan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a blast to be talk. We see each other every day. Like we talk all the time.
I know.
But it had been a while since we've been able to sit down and just chat. And like I said off the top, I had obviously getting to know you. I knew a lot of the stuff that you talked about. And I find it all, like I said, special and unique because it's different than a lot of the path that you find that you hear from people. Not that any of the paths are wrong.
Yeah.
But
it's different.
I feel like a lot of the people in hockey and in sports, it's like, oh man, I was a hockey guy my whole me. I started skating when I was 5. I played hockey my whole life. Football people like, oh, we every Sunday, the whole family, we gathered around. And you were someone who was like, no. I actually think you are the ultimate example of why people say hockey is the best sport to see live.
Yes.
Going to a hockey game literally and I literally changed your entire life.
Absolutely.
And I just love that because I think it's you don't hear those stories a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Very grateful to get to work alongside you every day, and we'll have you back on again. We'll repeat this, and hopefully we have a long summer of traveling to games and
I hope
all
so
that kind
too.
of stuff. So,
Awesome.
Meghan Angley, DNVR Sports.
All right, big thanks again to my good friend Megan. I don't have a producer on this show, someone that I can talk to, because I'm doing this here on the road. I normally have someone, Jay. It was my wife, last week. So I don't know. I think I'm just gonna end this. Like I don't have any. There's no one here to make conversation with. So I think I'm just gonna end this. Big thank you to Megan for coming out again. She's always got great stories. And her and I have been working together now for the last 3 years. She's always a blast to be around. So thanks to her. We're coming down to it here. NHL season, I think we got like 7 games left for the Avs, and then we're on to playoffs. So we're getting right down to it. It's an exciting time of year. NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs. You're getting into all the NFL offseason stuff. And then, I want to say baseball, but the Rockies are getting their heads kicked in every night. But thanks so much, guys. Ton of fun stuff coming from Guerilla Sports here as we barrel towards the playoffs. But thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Meghan Angley for coming on, and Angley for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys next week.